Week 2 of The Bachelorette is done, on to Week 3, and Michelle's season has started to settle into the typical Bachelor format. Frontrunners have emerged, guys have started feuding, and an early season villain has been stirring the pot. So let's take a look at the preview for next episode and see what we can sleuth out, including who might be getting eliminated next week, if Jamie's days are numbered, and some potential hometown date discussions. So, as per usual, please refrain from posting any blatant spoilers in the comment section below, and I'll leave a link to the full preview in the description.
I don't really know who to trust right now.
Are people really being genuine and authentic?
I'm ready to do whatever it takes for Michelle.
Okay, we're gonna pause right here. This, to me, is a pretty big shot right off the bat. Here we see Rodney, aka Granny Smith, getting the one-on-one date next week with Michelle. Based off of what Michelle is wearing here, it aligns with this tattoo date we've seen in the previews before. But why is this a big deal? Well, because now we know that there are 2 one-on-one dates with Rodney. This one-on-one date for next week, and then this apple orchard date from the season preview. Now, before, I couldn't tell you with 100% certainty that these weren't the same date or from the same day. Even if it was unlikely, there was a possibility that this was the day portion of a date, and then this a night portion. Now, however, we can definitely say that Rodney is getting a second one-on-one, and I think that this is even a hometown date. So, how do we get to this conclusion? Well, first, we have to go back to the season previews, where a large amount of focus is given to a poem that Michelle recites on a group date.
I was never the girl invited to cute dates at the apple orchard in the fall. I was the girl picked last for prom, but the first for basketball.
Pretty sad line, right? Well, it would make sense to me that after Michelle recites this, a couple of the guys take note and decide to do something special for Michelle. Rodney naturally takes her to that apple orchard, I mean he's the perfect guy to do so, and Joe here invites her to prom. Oh, and by the way, this poem reciting group date is another Bachelor staple. The kind of spoken word, public speaking group date we've been seeing repeated for quite a few seasons now. Now, typically, there's only one date a season where the men or the contestants have control over where the couple goes and what they do. And that date is hometowns. All others are run by either production or Michelle. So by that notion, wouldn't it mean that Rodney and Joe get a hometown date, where Rodney decides to take Michelle apple picking in California, where he's from, and Joe decides to invite Michelle to the prom she never got, in Minnesota, where they are both from, maybe even heading back to his or her high school to do so? I would also imagine that if these men take inspiration from Michelle's poem, they'd have to be on the group date where she recites it. And Rodney can't be on a group date next week if he's getting the one-on-one. So the poem date will likely be happening in the future, more evidence that this date and this date are from different episodes. Which, even if this isn't a hometown date, means Rodney is going far, as 2 one-on-ones in a season normally means that, at worst, you're making it to the episode before hometowns. So as a result, I'm moving Rodney into my top 4 and taking Clayton out. It's funny the kind of rabbit hole that a single shot can take you down in these previews. But there's more preview to look at, so let's keep going.
They're all putting their hearts on the line.
Oh my gosh.
So here we're getting one of the group dates for next week at the Palm Springs Air Museum. Now the big speculation that I have for this date is that it's the start of the Jacket Gate debacle to come. In case you haven't seen it, this is the moment I'm talking about from the season preview.
You need to keep your mouth shut. You're not the big dog. The big dog has a jacket. He just took his jacket? How you like me now?
Now coming back to this part with Will, it seems a little silly to be so invested in a jacket, right? Especially to the point where you're lording it over other contestants. But what if that jacket is something that Will wins during this group date challenge at the Air Museum? With how Peter and Will have feuded already, it would make sense to me that Will flaunts it in front of Peter so much to the point where Peter throws it in the pool. And funnily enough, this is almost the exact same storyline that we've seen from a different season, where Lincoln from Becca's season won the group date challenge and got a framed photo of him and Becca that he flaunted all night. This got on Connor's nerves and he threw the photo in the pool. So whoever writes the scripts for these episodes must have ran out of ideas for this one. But okay, if all this jacket business isn't convincing enough for you, there is preview footage to back this up. Now, in the preview that they gave us at the end of Bachelor in Paradise, there's a very brief moment where we see Will and Michelle kissing right here. Looks like they're on an airfield like the one at the Palm Springs Air Museum. And here, check out what Will is wearing. A jacket with a special little rose stitched onto it. And this is very different from the outfits that they're wearing in this shot. So it's not a part of the uniform that everyone's going to get for the date. Now, if we head back to this shot, we can see the jacket that Will is talking about is the same one that he was wearing on the airfield date. So I think it's pretty safe to speculate that Will's going to win this jacket on the group date. However, that doesn't mean winning the group date rose at the end of the night. But let's continue on.
I feel on top of the world right now.
This is our journey!
She brings out the absolute best in me.
You feel like you can trust me?
I do.
I could see myself falling in love with one of them.
Okay, so here we have Rodney showing Michelle that he's got balls. I mean guts. He's got guts. And the only thing of relevance that I have to add to this is it seems to be connected to the one-on-one date for next week in some way, as Michelle is in the same outfit here as she's in during their date. Otherwise, we have Martin and Clayton both at the night portion of the Air Museum group date. Maybe this is where Clayton finally starts to get some screen time. And we also have more featured screen time for Nate and Brandon. Nate from the pre-rose ceremony cocktail party, and Brandon from what I'd guess is the night portion of the second group date of the episode. But alright, if you're interested in the Jamie of it all, that's coming up right here.
It's so crazy. There's just not really a competition between me and the guys that are here.
How did he think he would get away with this?
What the dude?
So another big part of next week's episode is the continuation of Jamie's villain turn. Now, it's certainly possible the how did he think he could get away with it is about something other than Jamie bringing up the Michelle rumors from last episode, but with how everything was set up at the end of last week, unless something really out of left field happens, this has to be about Jamie, right? But either way, Jamie's stuff will come out at some point. In fact, here with Nate looking shocked, we can see that he's talking to Jamie right there. Could this be Jamie being found out? Could he be doomed? We're gonna talk more about that at the end, so let's keep going.
I'm gonna keep exposing you. This man is really push my butt.
He's manipulating us and her.
Do you see how hurt she was? Did you see that?
Alright, and this section here just makes me think they're talking about Jamie all the more. When someone says he's manipulating us and her, sounds like something that would be said after the guys find out it was Jamie who talked to Michelle about the rumors from last episode, and then pretended it wasn't him in front of everyone else. But okay, the preview's about to end, so let's finish this thing off and then talk eliminations.
Trust is something that makes or breaks a relationship.
It is absolutely sick.
My jaw's on the floor.
In one instance, it can come crashing down.
And there, the preview comes to an end, with Michelle's trust in someone coming crashing down in one instance. Again, barring something coming out of left field, the preview is implying that we're talking about Jamie. So, let's now dive into this rose ceremony and look at who might be going home, and is one of those guys going to be Jamie. Now, first of all, we get a great look at the men entering the cocktail party before the rose ceremony right here. But something tells me this shot has been tampered with. Normally, at this point, I'd be zooming in on every lapel to see which guys got the group date roses for the episode. However, here, there are no roses. Now, it is true that sometimes a lead won't hand out a group date rose at the end of a date, but that's pretty rare or only ever happens late in a season. And if we zoom in on Rodney right here, even he doesn't have a rose on. And there's no way that Rodney doesn't get a rose at the end of his date, as if you don't get a rose on your one-on-one, you're almost always sent home right away. And we know that doesn't happen. What I think is actually happening here is that the roses have been splotched over in Microsoft Paint by the Bachelor editors. We actually see this happen every once in a while in these previews. Usually it's to cover up bikini butts, but sometimes it's for spoilers too. Like famously, Bennett and Riley had their faces splotched out of the Men Tell All preview on Tayshia's season, as at that point the two hadn't yet been eliminated on the show. And I'm like 90% sure this is a splotch covering a rose on Rodney's jacket right here. Like, tell me what you think. I'm gonna pop into Photoshop and use the spot healing brush on Peter here to cover up the pocket square on his lapel. See? Impossible to spot from far away, but if you look really close, you can kinda see what's going on. Now, in this shot, there are 17 men visible of the 19 still left, so there could be roses on the other 2 guys not seen here. But Rodney for sure has to have one. So let's take a wild stab at this group date rose scenario. One person who definitely is still around but not in this picture is Martin. Based off of this shot from the group date that they gave us, he could definitely be getting the group date rose, and he isn't even in this shot, so they don't need to edit a rose out. The other man who's featured and very easily could get that same date rose is Clayton. I was also staring at Brandon's lapel here for like 20 minutes wondering if this was another splotch before I realized I've gone crazy and I stopped. But one thing's for sure, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing the episode and the rose ceremony to make sure if they really did edit out the roses in this shot. But okay, let's now finish off the video with eliminations. So last episode, 4 men were sent home, so we're going to look at another 3 or 4 guys for this next rose ceremony. Now, searching around the previews for group date footage does give us a couple of results that we haven't seen yet. This shot right here, and this shot right here. One of which is very important. Now, this moment you can immediately forget, as if you compare Martin and Leroy's trunks right here to the trunks that they're wearing in this shot, we can see that PJ is also hanging around at this moment. And PJ was eliminated last week. So this was just unaired footage. We have to keep stuff like this in our minds with each and every shot. Now this, however, is very interesting, because this group date shot could be from a future episode and not next week. Why? Well, if you look right here, you can see Peter's haircut. And Peter is one of the men on the airfield date. And since Peter can't be on 2 group dates in a single episode, that would imply that this is not from next week, and Jamie here gets a rose. However, there's one possible explanation for all of this happening next episode, and that's that this group date is one where the men who weren't invited get to come and watch at some point. This is something they've done before, in which case this could be the second group date next week. But ultimately, when we're looking for who gets eliminated, we can also refer back to this shot in Minneapolis that I've talked about before. Here, we've pretty much identified 11 of the men making it to Minnesota. Head over to my Night 1 season preview video for the details on that. And with 19 men left on the show, that brings us down to 8 guys possibly being eliminated between now and when they change locations to Minneapolis. Which, if they're eliminating 3 or 4 guys an episode, is after the next 2 rose ceremonies. And those 8 men are Chris G, Jamie, LT, Malik, Peter, Will, Romeo, and Spencer. Now, for the sake of this video and what I truly believe, we're going to assume that this is not next week's group date. So for now, I'm thinking that Peter stays, Romeo stays, and so does Jamie. We'll see for sure next week. Now, there are also a couple of shots of Spencer in the previews, and while they could happen sometime during next week's episode, this looks pretty dramatic. I think it's more likely something that will happen the week after next. So for now, I'll say that he'll probably make it 1 more week. Which already leaves us with our 4 guys, Chris G, LT, Malik, and Will. I think this is a pretty solid 4 to go. Maybe only 3 will be eliminated and 1 of them will stay, but if that one person does squeak through next episode, they'll just be gone the week after. And then it's Jamie's turn. So that's it for this preview breakdown for week 3 of The Bachelorette. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, let me know your theories down below, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll see how everything goes down and if the editors are truly photoshopping out roses next week. So until then, Bachelor Fantake, out.
It's so crazy. There's just not really a competition between me and the guys that are here.
This man is really pushing my buttons.